Right now, just by listening to me, you're taking part in one of humanity's biggest miracles, the ability to use language. You use it every day, but how much do you really know about how it works? Welcome to Mango's foundational series, How Language Works, where we break down everything you need to know about this amazing, intricate, and at times totally bizarre thing that we call language. The story of language is quite a fascinating one, so where else to start but at the very beginning? In this video, we're talking about what language is and why it matters. Among other things, you'll come to understand why there isn't one perfect definition for language. You'll discover what we call the people who study language, and you'll learn that there's more to language than just what we say. My hope is that you leave today's video thinking about language in new and exciting ways. I'm Emily. I'm a linguist at Mango. I love language so much that I got a PhD in it. And now the best part is I get to share all of the information about how language works with you. The truth is, language is so much a part of our day-to-day that we tend to take it for granted. For example, when you listen to someone speaking in your native language, it doesn't take much mental effort to understand them, right? Hearing our native language feels kind of effortless. It's like tasting coffee or seeing colors. It's just something that you understand and can do automatically, almost like you're on autopilot. But if you've ever studied a foreign language as an adult, then you know all too well just how complex language systems actually are under the hood. I mean, think about it. When you're learning a language, you're learning hundreds of thousands of words and a quite detailed list of nuanced grammatical patterns and word order rules. And that's not all. You're also learning a sound system, gestural patterns, conventionalized facial expressions, hand configurations if you're learning a sign language, and discourse norms, all of which can vary from community to community, country to country. In layman's terms, it's a lot, and it's honestly amazing that we can understand each other at all. Now imagine for a moment your life, but without language. How would you spend your time? How would you think, collect your thoughts, take collective action, communicate an idea, work? Language is so tied up with who we are and how we navigate the world. Every sentence you utter, each word you use, and how you say it says something about who you are and where you come from. Even the language that you choose to speak in, it all forms part of who you are. And when it comes to language, there is so much to learn and unpack. So where do you go to learn about language? Well, beyond watching this series, the answer lies beyond old, dusty dictionaries and grammar books. The answer lies in linguistics. Linguistics is the name for the fascinating field of study dedicated to human language. And the people who study linguistics are called linguists. Hey, that's me. That's what I do. Linguistics is a relatively young field of study, and it's very interdisciplinary in nature. And by that I mean that there's a lot of overlap between linguistics and other fields of study. Take, for example, human speech sounds. They are made up of speech waves, which have acoustic properties. So there's a good degree of overlap between linguistics and acoustical engineering. Additionally, language is processed in the brain, so there's a lot of interesting overlap between linguistics and fields like neuroscience, psychology, and cognitive science. Other sister fields to linguistics include anthropology, sociology, education, and computer science. That's just to name a few. We'll dive into the main building blocks of language in our future videos, but for now, just sit back, relax, and know that there's a lot of cool ways that language intertwines with other fields of research. Now, let's back up for a second. What we know so far is that there is a field of study dedicated to human languages, and it's called linguistics. But what's the actual definition of language? Well, interestingly enough, even linguists can't all agree on one definition for language. Here's why. Language is such a pervasive tool and phenomenon that it's hard to come up with one clear and simple definition that captures all aspects of it. While there doesn't exist one perfect definition for language, there are some things that you should know, and lucky for you, I have summed them up into 4 simple points. Okay, point number 1, this is perhaps one of the most important. Language is about more than just communicating to others. This is one of the most common misconceptions about language. Even Merriam-Webster gets it wrong. Their current definition for language is the system of words or signs that people use to express thoughts and feelings to each other. Now, is it true that all languages incorporate words? Yes. Is it true that we use language to express our thoughts and feelings to one another? Yes. But that's not all language is. It's also a powerful piece of human cognition that allows us to organize our inner thoughts. And it also importantly serves as a vehicle for expressing our personal identities and group affiliations. I mean, just think about how much of your inner thought in your mind relies on language, or why you change the way that you speak when hanging out with different groups of people. When we begin to look at language as more than just a means of communication, we start to realize that it paints a much bigger picture. We start to see that it's not just about what we say, but how we say it. And also what we use language for in the first place. Which brings us to number 2. Pinning down a definition for language requires making an important distinction between capital L language and lowercase l language. Here's the difference between the two. Capital L language is the overall phenomenon of human language. If I say, with the exception of developmental disorders, all humans acquire language. Generic language. Lowercase language, on the other hand, represents the different instantiations of human languages. For example, there are 7,000 different languages in the world, or my native language is English. Both of these would be examples of lowercase language. Uppercase language, lowercase language, two different things. Got it. Moving on to number 3. The defining characteristic of language is that symbols are used to make meaning. In other words, we should think of language as a code. And in order to use and decipher the code for a given language, you need to learn how specific symbols map to meaning. And side note here, when I say symbols, I'm not referring just to letters in the alphabet, but I'm referring to all the implementations of linguistic communication. So that includes things like speech, writing, hand signs, gestures, facial expressions, body language, braille, the mental representations of language, but I digress. The point is, all of the symbols that we rely on to make meaning are implementations of language, uppercase language. Are you ready for the last point? Point number 4. Language is an inherently dynamic system, one that changes over time and place. Just as culture changes, so does our language. Now, it might be comforting to some people to think of language as a static thing that stays the same, but it's never been that way, and it never will be. The truth is, old languages die out, new ways of speaking will emerge, and as we know, every technological or cultural innovation will require the addition of a new word into our vocabulary system. Even the accents that we carry today will change slightly with the next generation. So when it comes to language, change is the only constant. That's why language is so exciting. Well, there you have it. That's everything you need to know about the foundations of language. And believe me, we just scratched the surface. There's so much exciting stuff for us to explore when it comes to language and linguistics. Like, what's the origin of human language? How do new words get created? How do languages change over time? How is it that kids seem to learn languages so effortlessly? Where does grammar come from, and who made the rules? And how do bilinguals keep their languages separate? Do other species use language like us? Why can we be superstitious but not just a little stitious? Well, we'll get to all of those questions and more in this series of Adventures in Language. In our next video in this series, we'll be diving deeper into the scintillating world of speech sounds, where you'll get to hear me make sounds like, and my personal favorite, that's a real sound in real languages. If you want to be the first to know when that video goes live, then ring that notification bell. Thanks for watching. I'm here to remind you not to forget to take our fun, interactive What is Language quiz, which you can access through the link right here on the screen. In the meantime, you can catch up on our existing videos right here. Well, see you next time on Adventures in Language.